entitled "A Transformative Moment for Women" in the Washington Post print edition and the online op-ed, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, in the Washington Post online edition. Quote, "Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out." End quote. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes. Has Mr. Depp proven by a greater weight of the evidence that, question, the statement was made or published by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was about Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was false? Answer, yes. Question, the statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Question, the defamatory implication was designed and intended by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, due to circumstances surrounding the publication of the statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven by clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? Answer, yes. 3. As to the statement appearing in the op-ed entitled "A Transformative Moment for Women" in the Washington Post print edition and the online op-ed, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, in the Washington Post online edition. Quote, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, end quote. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes. Has Mr. Depp proven by a greater weight of the evidence that, question, the statement was made or published by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was about Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was false? Answer, yes. Question, the statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Question, the defamatory implication was designed and intended by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, due to circumstances surrounding the publication of this statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven by clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? Answer, yes. As against Amber Heard, we, the jury, award compensatory damages in the amount of $10 million. As against Amber Heard, we, the jury, award punitive damages in the amount of $5 million. In civil case number CL 2019-2911, Ms. Heard's claim against Mr. Depp. 1. As to this statement appearing in the April 8, 2020 online edition of the Daily Mail, quote, Amber Heard and her friends in the media use fake sexual violence allegations as both a sword and shield, depending on their needs. They have selected some of her sexual violence hoax facts as the sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, no. 2. As to this statement appearing in the April 27, 2020 online edition of the Daily Mail, quote, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt did not do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911, end quote. Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes. Has Ms. Heard proven by a greater weight of the evidence that, question, Mr. Waldman, while acting as an agent for Mr. Depp, made or published the statement? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was about Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was seen by someone other than Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was false? Answer, yes. Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven by clear and convincing evidence that the statement by Mr. Waldman was made with actual malice? Answer, yes. 3. As to this statement appearing in the April 27, 2020 online edition of the Daily Mail, quote, we've reached the beginning of the end of Ms. Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp, end quote. Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, no. As against John C. Depp II, we, the jury, award compensatory damages in the amount of $2 million. As against John C. Depp II, we, the jury, award punitive damages in the amount of $0.
All right. Does either side wish to have the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Jamie?
Members of the jury, if this is your verdict, please answer yes. If this is not your verdict, please answer no. Juror number 6. Yes. Juror number 10.
Yes.
Juror number 15.
Yes.
Juror number 16.
Yes.
Juror number 22.
Yes.
Juror number 27.
Yes.
Juror number 29.
Yes.
All right. I do find that the jury's verdict is unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes your service in this case. I want to thank you again for your dedication and your hard work during this trial. And I know I speak for everybody here when I tell you that we appreciate your sacrifices and your time and your public service in this matter, okay? So I'm going to have you go back to the jury deliberation room for one more time, and then we'll release you from there, okay? All right, thank you.
We've been watching as the verdict is delivered in this Virginia courtroom, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, and the case that Amber Heard counterfiled against Johnny Depp. And what we've seen is a stunning verdict almost entirely in favor of Johnny Depp here. The jury finding that Amber Heard, in her 2019 op-ed against in the Washington Post, did in fact defame him and has awarded $15 million total in damages. As for Amber Heard and her counterclaim, her counter lawsuit against Johnny Depp, there were 3 statements at issue here that were allegedly defamatory. In only one of those statements did the jury find for Amber Heard, and in that case awarded $2 million in compensatory damages, no punitive damages. So it's a mixed verdict somewhat, but as I turn to our NBC News legal analyst, Danny Savalos, it is, in sense, it is a stunning rejection of Amber Heard's story on the stand, her claims of abuse, the jury repudiating and finding that the statements in which she described herself as a victim of domestic violence clearly implicated Johnny Depp and that they were false.
This was no easy path for Johnny Depp as a plaintiff to a finding of liability. In fact, the statements in the Washington Post never even mentioned Johnny Depp by name. So the jury had to draw several inferences. Number one, that Amber Heard was calling herself a victim of abuse, and that Johnny Depp specifically was the one who supposedly abused her. And that means that the jury completely rejected Amber Heard's testimony about that abuse. Keep in mind that under the law, as her attorney pointed out, if the jury believed that there was even one instance of abuse, physical or otherwise, then they had to enter a defense verdict for Amber Heard. So that means the jury found zero instances of abuse in that jury room in order to find for Johnny Depp across the board on all 3 of the statements that he sued upon.
it's a total rejection of Amber Heard's story and her complaint. We want to turn to Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, a former federal prosecutor who was in the Bill Cosby trial, prosecuted Bill Cosby. You know, I look at the verdict form for Amber Heard's lawsuit against Johnny Depp. As I mentioned, there were 3 potential statements that were allegedly defamatory. In one of them, the jury finds for Amber Heard, which is an interesting mixed verdict because in some ways, Kristen, it seems like you find for one, you can't find for the other. What do you make of that?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. What I would make of it is that the jury found that there was no abuse or that the attorneys didn't meet their burden of proving that there was abuse. But also that Amber Heard did not set Johnny Depp up on that one night in question when she called the police. So if you kind of look at the verdict form and how they found no defamation for the 2 statements made by Mr. Waldman or Johnny Depp's attorney at the time, who was making those allegations, saying that Amber Heard's allegations were a hoax. Those were the 2 statements that the jury said, it's not defamatory. We don't find them false, so there's no liability there. The one that they did find to be defamatory was the one where it says, you know, they set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops. But the first attempt didn't do the trick. That's the statement that they said was defamatory. There's no abuse in that statement. So, in fact, they can find that there was no abuse, but that Mr. Waldman perhaps went a little too far in describing the tumultuous relationship.
Yeah, there is actually an internal consistency with the jury's verdict, and the bottom line is that they don't believe Amber Heard's claims of abuse at the hands of Johnny Depp. But for this defamatory statement that was actually made by Adam Waldman, the attorney for Johnny Depp, they found it defamatory. But as you point out, Kristen, that had to do with whether or not she set him up to make him look like he was doing domestic violence. They obviously said that went a bridge too far. Let me go to Mitra Ahorian, an entertainment attorney. So this is interesting. Now we know the verdict. We also see the damages here. $10 million awarded to Johnny Depp in terms of compensatory damages. That's things like lost wages, lost opportunities. $5 million in punitive damages. Punitive damages are designed to send a message.
Absolutely. You know, the 10 million almost seems arbitrary because, you know, is the value of the opportunities that Johnny Depp lost throughout his career, you know, going forward, valued at $10 million? Probably not. We know that for Pirates alone, he was making roughly $22 million. So that number, I'm almost curious to know how they came up with the $10 million. The $5 million is very telling, the fact that there is an award of punitive damages, because not only are they saying that you caused harm, but you should also be punished because you caused harm in a way that that was, you know, malicious, which was what the finding was.
Let's take a step back here. I want to turn back to Danny Savalos because you mentioned it, but I think it bears repeating. It is very hard to sue a public figure like Johnny Depp for defamation. The law is essentially stacked in favor of the defendant so that we can protect the First Amendment and have free speech. There are high hurdles that Johnny Depp had to overcome in order to receive this verdict. And it's quite astonishing that he was able to do so given these facts, which again underscores what the jury has decided here, that they did not buy one single bit of Amber Heard's story.
The Supreme Court long ago created a different rule for defamation when public figures are suing, understanding that for whatever reason, we let people have a little more liberty when it comes to criticizing. First, it was public officials, and then that was expanded to public figures. But that actual malice standard, it doesn't have anything to do with hatred. It's more about either knowing your statement is false or recklessly disregarding the falsity of the statement. And what's really interesting is that this is such a complete rejection of Amber Heard's testimony. Yes, the finding on the second count, I think when you look at that count, that was a very specific allegation. And when you have very specific allegations, there are more opportunities for those facts to be false. So I think the jury seized upon those. But on the whole, it's not inconsistent logically. I mean, this is basically the jury saying that they believed very little, if anything, of what Amber Heard said and produced in evidence, and they tended to find Johnny Depp credible. And Johnny Depp's path to a finding of liability was not a slam dunk at any stage. He had quite a bit to prove, even with the lesser civil burden of proof of preponderance of the evidence and clear and convincing evidence. But still, he had the burden to prove each and every element nonetheless.
Let's turn to NBC's Miguel Almaguer, who's been covering the court. He's outside the Fairfax County Courthouse. I saw some crowds out there earlier. And Miguel, I understand you have a statement from Amber Heard's lawyer.
Yeah, I want to read that to you, Savannah. They write, the disappointment I feel, of course, this is coming from Amber Heard. The disappointment I feel today is beyond words. I'm heartbroken that the mountain of evidence still was not enough to stand up to the disproportionate power, influence, and sway of my ex-husband. Heard goes on to write, I'm even more disappointed with what this verdict means for other women. It's a setback. It sets back the clock to a time when a woman who spoke up and spoke out could be publicly shamed and humiliated. It sets back the idea that violence against women is to be taken seriously. She goes on to say, finally, I'm sad I lost this case, but I'm even sadder still that I seem to have lost a right I thought I had as an American to speak freely and openly. Now, this statement came to us just minutes after the verdict came out, so it seemed to be a prepared statement that Amber Heard sent out to the press. And as the verdict was being read, Savannah, we should also mention that a crowd did gather outside the court steps, and for each count that was being rattled off, we could hear cheers of support when they were in favor of Johnny Depp. Certainly a pro-Depp crowd has been out here for the last several weeks. They continue to be out here today. We are several hundred feet away from the front steps of the courthouse, and we could hear those cheers very clearly over and over again as this verdict went mostly in the direction for Johnny Depp, Savannah.
All right, and I want to turn to Danny Savalas for a final thought. There is the right of appeal in Virginia in a civil case, so Amber Heard will have that decision before her whether to file an appeal in the next 30 days.
And so, too, does Johnny Depp have the right to file an appeal within 30 days in the state courts of Virginia, usually to the Circuit Court of Appeals. So they will weigh that. But, of course, that will be another costly battle because, after all, the appellate court does not find the facts anew. They consider only whether the jury made some serious errors of law or there was some abuse of discretion. So appealing is not a redo of the facts. It's anything but. It's always a long shot whenever you file that notice of appeal in civil or criminal court.
So for the moment, this celebrity trial wraps up with a stunning jury verdict almost entirely for Johnny Depp on the issue of whether or not he abused his former wife, Amber Heard, and a finding of defamation for Amber Heard on one of the statements made by Johnny Depp's lawyer. So a mixed verdict, but a rejection and repudiation of the story Amber Heard has been telling in court for the last few weeks. We're going to have a lot more this evening on NBC Nightly News, also tomorrow morning on Today. I'm Savannah Guthrie. Thank you for watching.